One thing that is very important with a collar is they have a front and a back. And I can look at a dress and tell if the collar has been put on backwards. And you would never want me to see that. So the best thing for you to do is, after you have cut out your collar, there will be marked on your pattern front and back. Now, you can mark both of them or one of them. When I was a little girl learning to sew, my mother always taught me to mark the back. So you don't have to write a big F and B or anything like that. You do need to put it in the neck seam allowance, because if you put it in one of the seam allowance on the outside, after we put the piping on, that would get cut off. So you need to mark it in the neck seam line. So that way, after I get the piping put on the collar and I'm ready to put on the collar lining, each piece will have this back marked on it. And if you just learn to mark the back or the front, you will get it in your mind which one you always mark, just like I always mark the back. And then, when you're ready to sew on your lining, there will never be any question about which one is upside and which one is downside. Now, when we do this collar today, I'm going to be using a thin material. So I'm using 3 layers. 2 for the front, 1 for the back. Make sure that you would have this piece with the front or back marked here and an opposite piece over here that would have the mark opposite. That way you will end up with a right collar and a left collar, not 2 left collars. So since this is going to be the front of the right side of my collar and I'm going to make it have 2 layers, I will lay 2 layers with the back marked here. I will lay 2 layers more over here with the back marked here. Pin them together and sew the piping around them so I have a left and a right collar. Okay, I have some collar pieces here that I have cut, and they are done out of lawn. Now, lawn is a thin material, so I'm going to use one of these as an inner lining, and I'm going to use that on the top, okay? So, since I'm going to use it on the top, I'm going to pin these together. Another option is to use a fusible interfacing to do this with. I probably want to use a woven interfacing, very lightweight, and most of the lightweight interfacings are going to be fabrics that you have to, or interfacings that you have to draw up before you use them. You want to draw them up before you use them, not after they're in the collar. Now, when you do this, you need to soak them in hot water and hang them to dry. If you iron them to dry, you're going to be fusing them to something besides your collar. So, just hang them to dry. Okay, so I have my 2 pieces. I've just pinned mine together. Now, I want to show you how pretty this steam-shaped piece of piping fits on here. There's no clipping, there's no struggling. It lays on there perfectly. Isn't that magical? Now, the next thing I want to show you is another little trick. There are a couple of companies that have come out with this. One of them is Fons and Porter. Especially if you're a quilter, you'll be familiar with that. The other one is a company called Soline. These are a $8 to $10 item, but they do come with a refill. So long as you keep the top on it, it doesn't dry up, and it is magical. I use it anytime I'm putting something, want to sew something little on a garment, or something like this that I want to be really perfect. It just screws up like that, and that's all you need to know. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to put some little dots of this, and you don't want to do much at a time because it will dry. Now see how nicely that holds in place? And then I'm going to lift up just a little bit more and put that in place, and a little more. Put that in place. You see I'm keeping my raw edges together because remember that seam allowance on that piping is trimmed to 1/4 of an inch. Our collar seam allowance is 1/4 of an inch. So by putting the raw edges together, this will sew absolutely perfect. And now, as you see, let me show you something. I can hold this up like this, and that piping doesn't fall off. It's temporary, but it'll stay there until you have it sewn on. And now I'm going to show you how to sew it.